Yo, it's Herman here, the creator of Enter the Future. Now, first thing I want to do is thank you for getting my digital product pack and supporting me. And if you haven't gotten it yet, then I hope that by watching this video, you have a better idea if it's the right fit for you. So what is Enter the Future? As you saw in the promo, it is a motion graphic asset pack that is intended to save you time from having to design elements from scratch, especially for every project that you work on. I spent the countless hours so that you don't have to. Although it's heavily influenced by my interest in the cyberpunk genre and futuristic aesthetics, I wanted it to feel flexible enough so that you can basically drag and drop it into any type of project. So I'm talking about your product commercials, music videos, live concert visuals, and also live stream elements, you name it, anything. I didn't want the designs to feel too simple or generic, otherwise it would just feel like any other pack, which is why I added my touch and give it that edge. Now, of course, every project that you work on requires different needs, which is why I made some of the assets customizable so that you can mix and match them according to the project that you're working on. Initially, I made this for myself so that I would have an arsenal of assets that I could keep going back to for every project that I would work on. However, my good friend Josh Olufemi convinced me to release a product that would benefit other creators like myself. And it made me think that if there were other creators like myself who were just tired of spending a ridiculous amount of time just hunting for cool assets or even creating them from scratch, then they'd probably be like me and want a toolbox they can keep going back to so that they can use those assets to make their videos stand out.
I just want to quickly mention that because I wanted this to feel like a toolbox you keep going back to, we've included an unlimited license. This is thanks to the amazing work of both Will and Josh. Something you may not be aware of is that there are a lot of marketplaces for digital products where you'll be offered a single-use license upon purchase. That means that you get to use what you buy once for a project, and then each time you use it for a different project, you have to buy it again. But with our unlimited license, you don't have to worry about that. Buy it once and use it forever. You obviously can't sell the product as your own or transfer it to someone else, but you can use this on any project that you work on without a worry. Details on this are in the license agreement file that is included with the pack.
So now that you know what the pack is and what it's for, what do you actually get? There are 6 categories of assets that I created, so let's go through them one by one.
Now, other than the 6 categories of assets, there's also a folder in a project file that allows you to customize some of the assets. If you just click into the folder and open up this After Effects project file, then you'll have something like this, where under the main comps, we'll have different folders that are customizable. Although they are customizable, they are also pre-rendered, so they are drag and drop ready along with the other assets. Now, before making any customizations in After Effects or with the Mogrt files, it's recommended that you install the fonts that I used. There's a text file called font list that I recommend you first opening and installing all the fonts before continuing. So the first category is text, and in the text folder, there are 4 Cybertxt comps. Let's open up the first one just as an example. And if you want to make changes to the text, there is a layer where at the end, it'll have the word edit at the end, and that basically means that you can edit it. So you can double click it to open up that pre-comp, and then all you have to do is substitute this text to whatever you want. Let's say tutorial, like that. Go back to the main comp, and then there you go. Changes the text, and then you can just render this out as you would. So that's just an example. Now you can make changes like how I just showed you, where you go into the main comp and then double clicking the layer that has edit at the end. All the ones that are editable, I also changed to cyan, so it's a little bit easier for you to see. So it's the first way that you can make changes, or you can also go into the main folder here, the number 2, make changes here, and then you can go to the corresponding name, where in this case is Cybertxt 001_edit, and then you can make the changes here as well. And I kind of recommend doing this over here because there are some comps later where there are multiple pre-comps. So to keep it simple, think of the main comps over here as the ones that you'll render from. So you can, let's open up this one, for example. So you can just render from here, but if you want to make changes to be safe, you can go to the make changes here, and let's say Cybertxt number 3. You would just look for that over here, and then has an edit at the end, and then start changing the text over here. Let's write tutorial because we're making a tutorial. I know I've exhausted all my creativity, so I can't make creative names right now. Now, as you may have noticed, in Cybertxt number 1 over here, there is a layer called controls, and you can make some changes, but I'm going to go over this later on in the Cybertxt customization section later on in the video. I just want to quickly run down the different categories. Also to keep in mind is that for the Cybertxt, technically, you can go in and just substitute it for a logo instead of a text, and it'll still look trippy. Okay, so I just dropped in a logo, random logo here, and you can see that it's actually not transparent. It's white, and then there's a bit of like a gray background. So I recommend that whatever logo that you're using, it'll work if it's transparent. So to quickly teach you how to remove the background, although this isn't what the tutorial is about, I want to just show you the options because, you know, maybe you want to use a logo and maybe the background isn't transparent and you don't know what to do, but you still want to make it look cool. So if it's a black background or a dark background, you can use something called Luma key. So we'll just slap that on top and then keying out the dark, have that setting, and then just change the threshold. And then now, as you can see, if I toggle the transparency grid, it is transparent, although it's a little not very clean. So you may want to play with the feather, or you may want to play with the tolerance or the threshold. You'll just need to play around until you find something that you're happy with. So as an example, just a rough example, this is okay. If I go back to the main comp, you can see that it's going to render a preview and the effect is applied on the logo, which looks pretty cool. And you can do this for all 4 of the Cybertxt compositions. That's enough about Cybertxt. In the text category still, there's Trinity, which are the lower thirds assets that you can add to your video, and then you just slap some text on top. As I mentioned before, anything labeled cyan is editable. So in this case, I have ETF, which is the text on the side. It's in cyan, and I can change that to TUT for tutorial. And then that will be part of the animation that you can render out and use that as a lower third. Text boosts are overlays that you can throw on top of any text to give it a bit of a transition, whether it's to have the text disappear or to appear. On to the second category, which is framework. All 8 of the array comps are for you to go in and customize with your own text or assets. Most of them are borders to enhance the visual of your frame. They work great for showing a title card, or you want something looping for a live stream. All of them are also pre-rendered if you prefer to just slap it into Premiere Pro or Final Cut and then make the text changes there. However, they won't be animated like intended to, so I do recommend working in After Effects for the best results. But you know, I wanted to give you guys the options because sometimes we're just on a time crunch and efficiency is priority. So if I go into one of the array ones, let's say the first one, as I mentioned before, anything that is labeled cyan or has the word edit at the end, you can go in and make changes to it. Now, array number 7 is a little bit different. It's meant to basically add some spice to your split screen. It also has editable text, but it's just as easy as dragging and dropping on top of your footage once you masked out your split screen, however that you wish. Now, labels are overlays that you can add wherever you like, whether it's the corner of your screen or a cool way to introduce some stats for a person or a character. Also customizable. If I open one up as an example, these ones are all editable. It can be the symbol, or it can be the text over here, or these smaller text as well. Label number 2 is the same thing. Anything editable is in cyan, and the text is editable as well. All 3 of the windows are pretty self-explanatory. You can place them anywhere as HUD display elements, or any text or logo you want to have a fancy frame, you can just throw a window on top of it. Moving on to the third category, which is backgrounds. I find myself only using backgrounds quite seldom for my projects lately, which is why I only created 4, but there are 4 that inhabit the style that I love, and I think that you'll find it useful if you need a background for your text titles, or you want to, let's say, project a background for your actor or artist. Next up, we have transitions, and these are really straightforward to use. Just drag and drop them between your 2 clips to give it an edgy transition that punches harder than, I don't know, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, any of your favorite martial artists. And then we have emblems. Emblems are looping animations that add flavor to your video if you feel like it's lacking a push to make it memorable. They're great for adding to holographic displays if you need some more details, or something to be tracked on a screen, or just using it as a simple animation behind some text. So you'll see that I did that in the beginning of the promo as an example, and I also tracked it onto some sunglasses that looked futuristic and made it look like it's some LED animation happening on the glasses itself. So I can see there's a variety of ways that you can use it yourself. I think a lot of them are great as loading animations, or something to place in the corner if you're doing a gaming live stream on Twitch, for example. Especially with streaming being a pretty popular thing that's going on lately, I think that gaming streamers can find these assets valuable and make it look more visually appealing. Lastly, we have extras, which are detail assets to push your video to 110%. If you need a text callout for a product, you can use the callout and target animation as an example. Both the tape animations are customizable in After Effects, so you can include your own text or logo. If I just open them up, as you can see, there's your text. Let's not move it like that, but you can change it to anything that you want. I'm gonna write a tutorial just for consistency's sake. So as you can see, the text is changed. You can also move the position so it's a little more centered, but you would render it from here as you would from any After Effects composition. These have been used in music videos and product videos before, and I even include it in the promo as some sort of like holographic tape. Oh, and using tape number 2 as an example of what I was talking about earlier when you're making changes to your text. As you can see here, if I double click here, there's another pre-comp that I have to open up and then kind of go into it. So it could be a little bit confusing if you can't navigate around After Effects very well. So don't worry, just go into the folder called Make Changes here and you can make the edits over here. And just a really quick tip, I know I'm kind of sidetracking a little bit, but just in case you find this issue, is that if you don't toggle the transparency grid, then if the text is black and the background's black, then you can't really see the text. So just make sure you toggle your transparency grid. If that happens, most of the time it should be okay, but I don't want you to find yourself in that situation and not know what's going on. Now, the 2 supplement images are details that you can slap on to anything and just add some style. Mecha leans more on the futuristic side, while film can go underneath anything video related. They can easily be rearranged by masking around the elements and repositioning them in your favorite way. And if you don't know how to do this, I'll briefly go through it in the removing elements section in this video. Now, if you look through the assets, you'll notice that almost all the animations loop perfectly. There are exceptions, of course, such as the text assets, because there's an animation that goes in and out. But for the most part, the framework assets, emblems, extras, and backgrounds all do. This holographic background over here is an exception, but you can easily make it loop if you just reverse the shot. So in this case, I'm just going to drop it into a new sequence in Premiere Pro right now as an example. If I duplicate it and then right click and then change the speed and duration over here to reverse speed, then that is a quick way for you to make it loop. And then you would repeat this for however long of a duration you would like the background to loop. And as I mentioned, for the text assets, let's say we're just going to take the Cybertxt number 1. Let's say that you want it to loop, but because there's an intro and an outro type of deal going on over here, then all you have to do is just take the middle section of the text where there's none of this intro and outro animation, and then you can delete this end part and then duplicate that, place it on top a little bit, and then just play with the opacity and keyframe that so that it looks like it continuously loops. And then, as I mentioned, you would repeat this process for however long you would like it to loop.
So most of the assets are kept in the color white. That way you can change the colors according to your video's theme. However, there are some assets that have accent colors like the Trinity or some of the array assets. So that's why in this section, I want to talk to you about my favorite way of changing colors, and this method being what I believe to be the most control.
Let's say that the asset that you want to change the color to is all white. Then you can simply add an effect called tint, and you can change the white to whatever that you like. So let's just drop that in real quick. Tint, as simple as that. And then you're going to map the white to whatever color that you wish. Let's say red. And then there you have it. It turns red. So that's method number 1. Another way for you to change the color, in this case, I'm using an asset with a accent color. This one is kind of like a lighter teal kind of look. And what I search up is CC Toner in the Effects tab, and that's the effect that we'll be using. And there's a lot of options for you to use in terms of how to change the color with CC Toner. So you can change tritone, and it'll take the midtones of the asset, the highlights, and the shadows, and you can change the colors accordingly. In this case, I'm going to use pentatone, and I feel like the brighter part of the image was what was blue. So if I change that to red like that, as you can see, all the brighter areas turn red. Of course, you can adjust this depending on the asset that you're using. You can do something like that as well, and then that's your midtone and your bright parts, but the whites, the highlights in this case, remains white. Now in this case, there's a bit of an outline of a red, which you may not really want. So I'm going to give you another option, which is change to color. And as the name implies, it changes from one color to the other. So in this case, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, which is from. So we're going to change the color from this teal to something else. Automatically it changes to red, but I know it's set to white over here, but let's say that we click it and then change it to red. Let's say, you know what? Let's go with another color because we've been using red a lot. Orange, yay. So it changes whatever that was kind of a bright teal to an orange, and you can change just the hue or the hue lightness saturation. It's up to you. And if you do so, it'll take the darkness of the color as well. into account and change it to that. So I like using this method if it's just a solid color, but I wanted to open up the door and explore different methods depending on the asset that you're using, and not only for this project, but for your future projects as well. Now, let's say you're using one of the backgrounds and you actually want to change the color a little bit, in the background, then you can always use something like hue and saturation. In this case, like this, hue, saturation, drag and drop that, and you can change the wheel to something else like this. You can play around with it to something a little more funky, or you can use the change to color and you can, let's say, change to color like this. And then let's say that you don't want the yellow, you actually want the yellow to be something else. Now we're just going to try and whip that the best of my ability. And then we're going to make it, let's say, pink like that. And then you can play around with the hue and saturation to further refine it a little bit. And you can also adjust the softness. And as you can see, basically the orangey red color has changed to pink. So you can mix and match the methods according to what you want to accomplish. But those are the ways that you can do it.
If you're familiar with my work, then you'll know how much I love glowy things. I'm like a moth. Show me something bright and glowy and I'm just gonna lose all my brain cells or just walk towards it. It's weird. Basically, most of the assets I try to leave untouched from the glow effect. That way you have full control and can add however much glow that you find is appropriate. So right now I'm gonna teach you 2 ways that you can add the glow effect yourself. So you have full control of how much you wanna apply to the assets.
Now the first way to add a glow is my favorite way of doing so. My favorite plugin is called Deep Glow. Like this, and oof, that looks really good off the bat. A little bit bright, so I'm just gonna turn it down, and there you have it. That looks futuristic and cyberpunky already. And it gives accurate light fall off when you apply the glow on anything, and looks absolutely beautiful. However, this is a paid plugin. It doesn't come with After Effects, but it is one that I'm sure that you'll be using very often if you're like me. Now, if you're trying to save money because you already bought this pack, thank you, then you can still add a really nice glow, don't worry. And it's a way that's built into After Effects. So I'm going to just delete this, and it's just by using the simple glow effect in After Effects, which is this one. This is the default one. If I just slap that on. Now, already there's a bit of a glow, but it's not quite looking too good yet. So we're gonna change the radius to something like, let's say 20. And then let's turn that down just a little bit like this. So we have a very kind of, how would I say, a light glow that's not spreading too much. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna hit Control D, and that's gonna duplicate our glow. Now this is a bit too much, of course, but we're gonna increase the radius, and basically we're faking the inverse square law a little bit. So I'm gonna double the number, and then I'm going to kind of go to 0.3 like this. And then you can play around with the value. In this case, I'm feeling like this is a little bit too glowy. So I'm just gonna change the intensity back a little bit like that. And this is already looking good. And if you're feeling a little bit bold, you can add a third glow and you can just increase the radius here, but you want to make sure that you turn down the intensity here. And then now you have a nice soft and even glow. But of course, the more time that you spend on this and further refine it, the better it'll look. Now, a quick tip and something I want you to keep in mind is that if you're adding a glow and it's not looking very pretty, it's not looking like blurry, and feathering out very softly as a glow should. And if it's starting to band, which means you start seeing these weird lines and artifacts, then it could be because of your color bit depth. So another example is, let's say that you're making changes to Cybertxt number 1 here, and this one has a glow built into it as well. And right now it's a nice soft even glow, but let's say there's lines on it and you don't know why. Then you can change the color bit depth over here. Right now it says 16 BPC, but maybe yours says 8. So I'm just gonna turn it down to 8 bits per channel so you can see what I'm talking about. And just like that, you can see the lines. This is called banding, and it happens when you're at a lower bit depth and it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look like a glow. So all you have to do is just make sure that you click this and change it to something higher, like 16 bits or 32 bit is fine as well. And it will become a nice, soft, even glow.
Now let's say that you're using one of the array assets, but one of the elements in that asset isn't quite fitting with your video theme, but you do like how the rest of it is working out. So all you have to do is mask it out.
In this case, I'm going to show you with the pen tool in After Effects, assuming that you're doing it in After Effects, but you can do it in your other programs as long as they have a masking feature. I know for sure Premiere Pro has one. It would be under the Effects tab, and then I think it's opacity, and then you can add a mask using a pen tool. However, we're going to use a pen tool here in After Effects. You can click this pen icon, or you can hit G as a shortcut, and then you're just gonna draw the area that you want to mask around. In this case, I'm gonna actually first duplicate the layer, hitting the shortcut Control D will duplicate the layer. We'll call this, sidebar, and then, we'll call this one bottom bar. So the sidebar, I'm just naming it as this, and then the bottom bar, I'm gonna isolate over here. And then I'm just going to hide the visibility of the sidebar for now. And then the bottom bar, I'm going to take that pen tool, and I'm just gonna draw around the bottom bar, like that. And as you can see, it's cut out so that we don't see the sidebar. And then we can hit M, which is a shortcut to bring the mask up that we just drew. And then right now it's on the add mode. So we can hit Control C while highlighting the mask, not the layer, but the mask itself. Control C to copy it, go to the bottom over here, sidebar, hit Control V, okay? And basically we're just duplicating the mask over to the other layer. Hit M so we can bring it up, and then you can change the mode to subtract. So that this way, using the same mask that you just drew, if you turn on the visibility here, you can see that this is the sidebar and this is the bottom bar. And the reason I'm doing all this is because I'm splitting them up into two basically separate assets, and then I can move this bottom bar to the top like this. So that is one very quick and easy way for you to move assets around that are already pre-rendered. Now another example would be the supplement image over here. I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. And let's say that I'm going to change the scale by hitting S and then changing it to something smaller like this. And let's say that you want to move it over here like that. And that's not looking too bad. But let's say that you want most of these icons on the bottom corner over here, but you want to keep the number 1 on top. So how would you do that? Basically the same idea. You want to duplicate both of them. You can draw a mask on one of the layers. I'm just going to do it fairly quickly because I already shown you how to basically do it. So I'm just drawing around where I want to cut out, and then hitting M, copy the mask, paste it over here, change the mask over here by hitting M, and then going to the mode and changing it to subtract. And now I've separated them both. So I believe this one should be, yep, the remaining ones. So I can move that to, let's say, as an example, just the corner over here, like that. Maybe this is how you want it to look. Maybe you even want to rescale this number 1 so it's bigger. And that's a simple way for you to remove and move around elements.
Now let's say that you like one of the assets, but you don't want it to be animated. Maybe you just find it a bit too distracting for that particular scene that you're working on. Don't worry, here is a solution for you.
Now, a simple way in After Effects to freeze the frame is by exporting it as a layer. So let's say that this is the frame that I want to keep and I don't want it to animate. All you have to do is go to Composition over here, Save Frame as File like this. And in your render queue, it will now be the output model will be set to Photoshop, and it'll be a PSD file that you can drag and drop into your favorite editing software. Now, another way that you can do it is in your favorite NLE. In this case, I'm just using Premiere Pro as an example, but I'm pretty sure that whatever software that you're using, you would have something very similar. So I'm just going to drag and drop this into a new sequence as an example. And let's say that this is the frame that I want to freeze. All you have to do is right click it, go to Add Frame Hold, and from this point on, it will not move like this. And you just delete everything else like that. So now you have basically a still image.
The customizable project file that you get is based in After Effects. So I'm gonna quickly walk through on how you can export assets yourself, just in case you're not too familiar with the program. Now, there are pre-rendered assets that you can simply drag and drop onto your footage. However, there are some customizable assets like text that are based in the After Effects program.
So once you're in your composition and you're happy with your changes, in this case, using Cybertxt number 1 as an example, you can hit the shortcut Control M, which will bring this composition into the render queue, where it will, it will be basically ready to render, but you want to make some changes first. The first one is the output module. So you want to hit the arrow, and then you'll have some options that you can export in. In this case, let's use custom in case some of these are not showing up. Then once you hit custom, then you want to first go to format, and I like using QuickTime, and then you can change the format options to something else. In this case, I'm using Apple ProRes 444, which is what I use to pre-render the other assets, or you can use QuickTime Animation. Those are both that I recommend for the highest quality. And then just make sure that in your video output that you're changing the channels to RGB plus alpha if the composition that you have has a transparent background. And alpha basically means that it'll retain the transparency. If not, then the background is just going to be black. So if you don't mind that, you can use some other formats to export it. But in this case, we're just going to keep it simple like this: QuickTime, Apple ProRes 444, and then have the channels to RGB plus alpha. Hit OK, and then you go to the output module, and then you just click the name, and then you can go into whatever folder and destination that you want it to export to, and then all you have to do is hit that big shiny button, render, and then it'll just blast off. And then let's do that, and just make yourself a nice cup of coffee, go for a lovely stroll, and depending on what you're rendering or your PC specs, it should be done pretty soon. It'll even show you the elapsed time, which is how much time it has passed, and the estimated time remaining, which in this case is going to be about 4 to 5 minutes.
All right, let's say that you rendered out your beautiful customized assets, or you decided to use just the pre-rendered ones, or you're just mixing a bit of both. Now you're ready to drag and drop those assets into your favorite editing software. So I'm going to show you a few examples in Adobe Premiere Pro.
Let's say this is the footage that you want to blast into the future or make it look more modern. Then I'm going to take the assets that I rendered, one of the two over here, and slap it right on top. As simple as that. But as you can see, nothing is appearing for some reason. And this might happen to you if you are in a sequence that is 1080p, which is what I'm in right now, but the asset is rendered in 4K. So we're just going to take that asset. We're going to change the scale to 50%, and that will bring it back down so that you can actually see the asset and fit to your sequence. Now, in this case, let's say the color isn't quite matching. I've already taught you how to change the color of your assets in multiple ways. In this case, even in Premiere, I believe there is a change to color. Oh, there is. You can slap that on, and then you can change the color from this green to something like the yellow over here. Let's say something like that. And that matches the tone a little bit better. Same thing with this label over here. I'm just gonna slap it on top, just like that. And in this case, I'm gonna scale it down. And right now there's a black background. So I can change the blending mode to screen, which is the one that I use most often because it doesn't affect the quality of the asset. It basically looks like it's slapped on top. And then I can reposition it, and I can also copy this change to color effect to the label over here. Do that, and then change the from color because it wasn't a green that we were using earlier. We can change that from this to yellow, and we're just changing the hue, so it's not going to be that muddy yellow that was shown earlier. And then we can just reposition this footage so that it's framed a little more nicely, and something like that kind of works. We can always rescale it, and you can just play around with it as much as you like, but it is as simple as that. Look at that. It's already making the video look a lot more slick, and it only took a couple clicks in a few seconds. Now, let's say, I'm just gonna make some cuts here like this. Oops, gonna delete this part. And then let's say that you wanna add another clip. I'm just gonna take one from my timeline from somewhere else. Doesn't matter where you grab it from, but let's say that you wanna make this fancy transition from this shot to this shot. And we're gonna take our pre-rendered assets. In this case, I have it under a couple folders, but ultimately it's in these categories, and I wanna add a fancy transition. Let's do ripple, why not? All you gotta do is drag and drop that on top. I'm going to delete the audio by unlinking it and just deleting it. I'm gonna sandwich it right on top, like here. And then we're gonna time it so that around here is where the X kind of drops. And then we're going to change the blending mode, just like what we did before, to something like screen. And then once you play that, boom, look at that. Look at that sick transition. Oh man, really adds some impact to your video, doesn't it? So as you can see, it's all about mixing and matching and playing around with the assets. In this case, if I just, I'm just going to freestyle it and just put some random stuff just so you can see how it can be fun to mix and match the assets. So using array number 5, just using the pre-rendered asset, I'm going to change the blending mode to add, like this. And then we're going to change the scale to 50 so that it's actually in the frame. So we see that on the side, which is a nice little touch. We're going to add some supplement. Let's use this one. Let's use mech. And then we're going to change the blending mode to maybe soft light, and then change the scale to something like 40 so it's smaller, and then we'll readjust accordingly once I put it down there. Something like that maybe. And this is me being a man without a plan, you know. I have no idea what's going on here, but I'm just playing with whatever looks good. So I just duplicated the supplement layer so that it's a little more apparent because it was a little bit too soft earlier. I can play with the opacity as well, but I have my blending mode to soft light for both of these. So you can change it to however you like. And already this looks pretty cool. This is like a nice little thing that adds some spice to this shot and makes it look a little more gamey and futuristic for the stream. So we're here in the Cybertxt Customization section, and I want to talk to you about some of the extra controls that you have for the two Cybertxt compositions. So for the first one, which I have opened over here, there's a fuchsia colored layer here called Controls. And then you want to go into the Effects Control tab over here, which is next to the Project tab by default. So once you have that, you have these few options that you can make changes to. The first one is the text outline only. So once it's checked, it means that it will just take whatever text that you have and it will create an outline, and it'll just show the outline over here. If I uncheck it, as you can see, it will fill in the inside, so it's not just an outline. So it really depends on what kind of look that you're going for. Now, another option is LED dots. So if I checkmark that, and then just let it kind of preview. I have it at full res, which is why it's taking a little bit longer, but now it looks kind of like, you know, pixel dots. It looks like LED dots that would be displaying on a, you know, pixelated LED screen, which I think is a really cool look. Now, if you have the text outline only checkbox on, along with the LED dots, it will not have the outline only, but it is a different look for you to have as well if you prefer something like this. But just keep that in mind. You can't have both the only outline and the LED dots. It'll fill it in. If this box is checked and it's only the outline, then you can play with the thickness of the outline. So in this case, it's, I believe, the thickest when it's on the left. If I go somewhere like this, it should look a little bit thinner. Let's go even a little more. And then as you can see, the outline is thinner. But in this case, I want it to look nice and thick so it's easy to read, but I wanted to provide that option for you guys. Next one we have is text color to white. So the more that I slide this over, the more white it's going to be. So I'm just going to give it some time to kind of render out a preview. So you can see the before and after. The outline is a little more white, right? Now this isn't too apparent when it's just the outline, but if I turn this off so you can see the fill, and then we turn this up like this, the inside of the text will be a lot more white, like this. So I wanted to give that option to you guys if you want something a little bit less colorful. Now the noise, it's a little bit self-explanatory. The more noise that you add to it, the grainier and more noisy this part gets. So by turning it up to 130, you can see that it's more like noisy. I don't know if there's another way to say it, but if I turn it all the way down to something like -3, which is essentially 0 in this case, it's going to be giving you a cleaner look. So it doesn't have that grungy cyberpunk noise look. And then lastly, we have the intense glow. So this is an option where if you want it to, you know, have a more intense glow, then you can keep this check mark on. If you want to turn it off, then this is what it looks like. So as you can see, the glow is not as strong. It's not as forceful and in your face, but personally, I'm a big fan of glowy things. So I like leaving stuff like that on. But yeah, I wanted to give you all these options that you can play around with depending on the tone of the video that you want to slap this on. Now moving on to Cybertxt number 2, over here, there is also a fuchsia colored layer which says controls, and then you just go to the effects control tab and you have fewer options here, but they are very straightforward. So the first one, just like the other one, LED dots, if you want them on, then you'll have these LED dot looks. Turn them off and it is a cleaner look. For glow, having checkmark on means there is a nice and soft glow. If you turn it off, then there is no glow. And then lastly, we have chromatic aberration, which is this kind of pinkish cyan type of split effect, this kind of glitchy effect to it. And if you don't want that because you want a cleaner look, then you can turn that off and it will just be a simple white like this. So it really depends on what you're looking for. If you want a really clean text, then you can just uncheck all of these. And if I play it through, this is what it ends up looking like. A bit of a cleaner option if you don't want that gritty digital feel. All right, let's talk about Mogrt files. I've only recently discovered how useful Mogrt files are for Premiere Pro users. So if you don't want to go through the hassle of customizing it in After Effects or you're just not familiar with the software, I provided an option that allows you to keep your workflow completely native in Premiere Pro. Let's go through how to do it. Anything you can customize, I put it in the ETF_Mogrt folder right over here. And as you can see, this is the amount of things that you can customize. And you're gonna wanna move this folder to a specific spot that allows Premiere to discover it. So we're gonna go back, we're gonna hit Control-C so that we copy this, and then we're gonna paste it to your local drive C, and not just the root, but we're gonna go to Users, like this, and then you're gonna go to the one that's your name. In this case, it's Herman, that's my name. And then you're gonna go to App Data. Now this folder is normally hidden, so if you can't see it, then you can simply go to the tab over here for View, and then check the hidden items so that you can see hidden items. And then you're gonna double click the App Data. You're gonna go to Roaming, then you're gonna go to Adobe, and then go to Common, and then you're gonna look for the Motion Graphics template folder right over here. Double click that, and this is the place where you wanna drop in your Mogrt folder. Now you would hit Control-V at this point to paste it in, but in this case, I'm not gonna do that because I already have the folder right over here, ETF Mogrt, and then in there are all the lovely Mogrt files. So once it is in the appropriate destination, you can close this, and then once you're in Premiere Pro, I'm just gonna open up a random timeline right over here, and you're gonna go to Window, and you're gonna go to Essential Graphics, and that's gonna bring a new window right over here. We're gonna actually give it a little more room so that we can see what's going on. And then it'll show all these templates over here. And we don't care too much about these, but you want to look up ETF. And it'll show up Mogrt like this, and it'll show up all the Mogrt files from the Enter the Future pack that you can actually customize. So in this case, I'm gonna drop in, let's say, array number 1. All I'm doing is dragging and dropping right on top. It'll load it up. And then you have the effect over here where you can actually customize it in Premiere Pro. How amazing is that? And how you do that is by going to the Edit tab right over here while clicking this layer. And then all the things that you can change show up on the right. So in this case, let's say tutorial ETF like this. And then once you click away, it'll update, and boom, now your text is in the border. And you can change the font, of course, and the font size, and a live update. And then you can also change the position over here, the X and the Y. So if I just drag that over here, so it looks a little more pleasant, then there you go. You can also change the color to match something in your scene. So let's say you want to go for like a pink like this. And then all these other parameters are to further refine the color. And it is as simple as that to customize these assets in Premiere Pro.
All right, so that is everything that I wanted to cover about the pack. Hopefully this will be something that you keep going back to and applying to your projects no matter what it is. I personally believe that the devil is in the details. It's what sets your work apart from the ocean of other creators. There's so many talented creators out there, so I take whatever I can to get a step up. So hopefully you see these assets as an opportunity to give your video a little push that it may need. Something to be careful of though is to not cake your video with a bunch of assets and effects and just, you know, as humans, we tend to go overboard a little bit at first, but mixing and matching those assets in a way that enhances your video instead of taking the spotlight away, that's something to be careful of. But hey, if you have the pack, then it's in your hands now. You can do whatever you want with it. You don't even need to listen to me. Most importantly, I hope that no matter what project that you're working on and using this pack with, is that you're having fun as a creator. Yes, it is meant to increase efficiency, but if you're like me, it's fun using assets as kind of like Lego blocks and just seeing what you come up with. And also, I hope your client likes what you do with it as well. Thank you again for your support if you have this pack. Now, if you don't, but you watched through the entire video, then thank you for your time. If you want to stay tuned to what I'll be up to next, then follow me on Instagram. My handle is @coffeeliquor. Again, my name is Herman. Until the next time, peace.